In this scene, we see chaos happening at the royal palace. The magic crystal ball is broken, and the senior maid is shouting and asking who did this. But the question is, the magic crystal ball is enchanted with strengthening magic that an average person would not have been able to break. Now that we see Arne drinking tea in the garden, she is telling us about how she intentionally broke that annoying magical sphere. Now a maid comes forward and tells everyone that she is the one in charge. She apologizes to everyone for not being attentive enough. The senior maid shouts at her and scolds her. She even tells her she can't pay for this magic spare even though she was to work in this palace for 10 years. After listening to this, Arne felt uneasy about it because she was the one who broke that sphere. Another maid is telling Arne about what will happen to the maid who broke the sphere. She'll be driven out since she broke something valuable. She has to repay her debt, and since she made such a grave mistake, no other family would hire her. Simply put, that maid's life is over. Arne feels upset after listening to this. Worried, Arne went there and told other maids not to make a ruckus about this because it happened at her place, even if she did not want such a ruckus. She says, "You are making such a fuss over something like this." She even told them it's not a big deal, so just end it here. Everyone was astonished after listening to this. All the maids were staring at Arne. She felt she would die with their gaze. Now Arne tells everyone it is natural for people to make mistakes. Besides, we can just buy another magic spare, and hence she ends the matter and tells everyone to work. After listening to this, the victim's maid cried and told her to accept her allegiance. She said she would pay this kindness until her last breath. Now Arne is thinking about how she's the one who broke the magic spell in the first place. After this, Arne's mom laughed in another magic sphere ball. She said she knew something like this would happen, so she sent plenty of her magic spares. Arne is dissatisfied after listening to this. After this, the senior maid told me about this incident with Alan and Cassian. Cassian is now thinking that she did not have an interest in matters concerning the palace, but he was wrong. Then Cassian stood up and went somewhere. Alan was astonished because His Highness is usually not the type to leave while working. The scene changes, and we see Arne in the garden with the victim's maid. She suddenly sees Craven and is astonished. She asks him why you are here. Craven is wearing a weird dress. Arne asks him why you are wearing it. Craven tells her it is a disguise for a maid. She also asked if anyone had seen you, and he said, "Of course not. Infiltration and disguise are my specialties." Now she asked him what the knights were doing and why you were here. He told her he had resigned and come here. Arne was astonished after listening to this. Craven tells her he should be by her commander's side. Arne seemed uninterested in talking to him after this. She ignored him. However, on the contrary, he tells Arne how she saved his life on the battlefield. Hence, he had no choice but to pledge his allegiance to His Majesty as part of his noble duty. But the only person he follows is the commander. Arne ignores him, but then Craven shouts at her and tells her what kind of marriage this is in the first place. Arne ignored every word that came from Craven's mouth. But Craven is very stubborn. He blocks her way and asks her again, "Why are you treating your beloved swords like this?" Arne tells him to go back as you are being noisy. She also tells Uncle Sarno that he is returning home and you should go with him. But Craven insists on letting him stay here. Even as a maid, he'll do his job well. Suddenly Cassian came there and saw them and asked her what was happening here. "My wife." Cassian was very angry. He asked, "What are you doing here?" "Wife, why she is here?" Arne was astonished after seeing Cassian here. She was about to tell Cassian, but Cassian misunderstood him as a maid. He said she doesn't look like a maid from the Buckle Palace, and now Arne takes advantage of this misunderstanding and tells Cassian she brought this maid from the Western Empire. Cassian surprisingly did not ask any complicated questions. Craven also took this opportunity and said to them he'd be taking her leave. Cassian was not looking happy, so Arne asked him, "Are you mad?" In reply, he said you were having a secret conversation with that maid. Arne instantly replies, "No." Cassian asks her, "Did that maid seem normal to you? She seems quite muscular and manly. What do you think?" Arne tries to think of a good reason. When she's thinking, Cassian says, "Her eyes look beautiful." When she is in deep thought, Arne's face reddens. After listening to this, she says, "Other people say my eyes are scary, like a killer's eyes." Now Arne is thinking about her past and how she has always been regarded as a cursed monster due to her bloodshot crimson eyes. She tells Cassian, "Everyone has been scared to look me in the eye ever since I was a child. A lot of people say I am the family's curse. Usually only one person in each generation is born with these eyes." Cassian also tells her, "My grandfather and uncle are both sword masters with crimson's eyes." He asks, "Is your uncle the one who caught the apocalyptic dragon that had awoken 30 years ago and ended the 10-year-long war with the Eastern Union?" Arne says yes. She is now thinking it's true that her uncle is a dragon slayer, but why are they saying he ended the war with the Eastern Union? After listening to this, Cassian was smiling, and Arne asked him, why are you smiling? All of a sudden Cassian's mood changes from serious to romantic. He tells her to call him dear. Arne is astonished after listening to this. Her face reddens. She says she never even said that word in her entire life. Cassian told Arne in a very romantic manner that he would call her by her name from now on, and she also told Arne to call him by his name. Arne called him by his name, Cassian. After this case left the place, he was thinking about Aruna's uncle, the dragon slayer. He's smiling and murmuring. Cassian says he does not seem to be anyone dangerous. Should we just catch and interrogate him later? Now we see Craven with Arne. She thinks it has been 2 days since Craven has had that appearance, and no one has commented on it. Are my eyes the stranger ones I don't even know anymore? She asks Craven to explain how this happened. Craven told her after the commander left to get married. The Golden Dragon Knights caused an uproar after all the Golden Dragon Knights moved as one might in body. We all wanted to see the commander, but you were not there. Do you think we could just stay still when you disappeared without a word? And so I immediately handed in my resignation letter. Arne is now thinking of telling them that this is just a 3-month-long relationship. Craven also told her I happened to encounter Urgent as well when I went to submit my resignation letter. I guess he resigned as well. Craven notices someone is eavesdropping on them. The person who is eavesdropping is the same maid who got scolded for breaking a magic spare ball. Craven intensely looks at her and says it seems like the maid who is staring at us is annoying the commander. I have to deal with her. Arne instantly shouts at Craven and asks, what are you doing? Craven tells the maid, Her Highness has already accepted my allegiance. Please pledge your allegiance during your nursing life. The maid is scared, and she runs away after listening to this. Craven closes the door and asks Arne, I did a good job, right? But Arne didn't look pleased at all. She thought that she should have him leave with Uncle Sarno. As the scene changes, Craven serves the tea to Arne as usual, and Arne is not pleased at all. Craven tells her, you're heading to the capital soon, so you'll need a maid like me. We got to know that there is one rule every married novelist must follow unconditionally, and that is to obtain the approval of His Majesty the Emperor. As Emperor, he presides over possible conflicts within families, although it is more used to announce the property inheritance of the nobilities. Arne replied to Craven, well, in this day and age, it's just for formality's sake. Out of nowhere, we saw the maid asking to have a movement with Arne. Arne thought they probably found out that he was a man. Both Craven and the senior maid stare at each other, and Arne asks, really, what happened? Now one maid says we were with Her Highness first. It breaks our hearts that suddenly another maid got close to Your Highness. The maid says, does Your Highness favor that maid because she's also from the Western Empire? We will also train in the Western Empire. Please give us a chance. Craven was also astonished after listening to this. The senior maid came forward and said, that's how it is, Your Highness. I think it would be wise if you didn't only favor one maid. Then all of this was jealousy. Arne told them they were all misunderstanding. It's not favoritism. I like all of you. After listening to this, all the other maids blushed and replied that they also like Your Highness. After this, Arne takes a deep, relaxed breath. Departure to the capital. A few days later, we see Arne going to give her a greeting. Cassian told her not to be nervous. He kissed her hand and said, I won't be able to see you for a while. I'll get going after I settle my work here. Arne says I'll leave with my uncle first. Cassian replied, I'll catch up as soon as I can. After telling her this, he kissed Arne and said, even if you were to miss me, please be content with this for now. The maid was astonished after seeing this, and Arne's face is also reddened. Arne is thinking about this in the carriage. While she is thinking about this, the carriage is attacked. It's an ambush. Arrows were falling from the sky. Craven shouted, protect the carriage, protect His Grace and Her Highness. He says we have to protect Duke Sarno and Princess Arne. Everyone gets into a defensive formation. He is also thinking about how this could happen as soon as we arrive at the Northern Empire. Now that we see Cassian playing chess at the palace, a messenger is running towards Cassian, shouting an urgent message. He said the Archduchess was ambushed. Cassian was astonished after listening to this. Again, we see Arne in the carriage, and everyone is in danger. The maids are telling Arne that they will protect her. But Arne says sorry to them and gets down from the carriage. She rode the horse and pulled her sword nevermore out. Here we are seeing Cassian rushing towards the battlefield. He's thinking about Arne. He is worried about Arne. While on the battlefield, Craven sees the legendary sword that has been passed down by the Rulgosa family. Between the two swords, the ones that swallow every soul, the notorious sword, Nevermore. Arne is slashing through every attacker, Craven says, with that sword, we could turn the tides of this battle in a single breath. Craven was very impressed by his commander. Aruna is battling ferociously. She killed every attacker in an instant. The sword nevermore says, Goddesses, it's our young contractor. What can I do when you call me so suddenly? It's been a long time since I was called. How would you be so hard on me? Arun throws that sword, saying it is noisy. Craven says to Arun, Commander, you didn't spare a single person, so now we can't determine who sent them. Arne replies, if they have any business with us, they'll attack again. Now we see Cassian's force arrive at the battlefield. They were astonished after seeing her. Arun was unharmed, she didn't say a word. After that, Cassian arrived and got off his horse and hugged Arun. Arun blushed, and Cassian says, I'm glad I followed out of concern. Are you hurt anywhere? Arun replies, no, I am alright. Cassian takes a look at the battlefield, and he is shocked because not a single enemy is left, so he asks, who did this? Arun doesn't know what to tell him, but Aruna's uncle Sarno came forward to explain everything. He told the one who saved Arun from almost getting kidnapped, as well as the one who annihilated the enemies, that it was all thanks to Sir Craven. Craven himself was astonished after listening to this. Arun also says it was Craven. Everything is done by him. Cassian was also astonished. After listening to this, Arun glares at Craven, and she says, if you say anything, I will kill you immediately. In contrast, in the northern imperial capital, Chromium, everyone was talking about Cassian and Arun. Did the two of them meet by chance and fall in love? It is said that His Highness the Grand Duke fell in love with her at first sight, so he confessed. Who knows, the Duke can marry the Princess of the Western Empire. After listening to this, one of the civilians told another, what about Lady Haley? We got to know a woman like Cassian. Now we see Arne and Cassian together. Out of concern for Arne, he ended up following along. Arne says the mansion of Archduke Ternugen's family is really big. A butler came at them. Cassian ignored him, and he asked Arne if it's okay. Would you like to take a walk around the mansion with me to clear my mind? At the same time, in the northern palace, we saw Cassian's assistant worrying about something. Now we get to see a flashback of a few hours ago when Cassian's assistant told him it was no ordinary raider. Even after listening to this, Cassian is silent, so his assistant asks, are you okay? He says he already knew who did this. His assistant was astonished after listening to this. Cassian says he won't let anything happen to her in a very merciless manner. Now we are back to the present. Here, Cassian assistant thinks about Arne and says maybe she got caught up in some great conspiracy and became sacrificed. Then he tries not to overthink it and says, after all, Arun is a kid who will kill them all and come back if need be. So it's quite right that she suffers in the marriage. After this, a butler came and told him His Majesty had permitted him to enter the audience. Please go this way. He felt pleasant and said, let's get to work. He says he can't go empty-handed when he gets to visit His Majesty of the Northern Empire. So just to show that I'm asking them to take good care of Arne at the same time. Now we see Arne is staying in the room of the deceased Grand Duchess. The butler explained to her that originally it was a room that every generation of royal concubines had to use, but after a few incidents, it was changed to this room. The ornament on this door is an age-old treasure ordered in Sasau. Arne was tired of this, she just wanted to run away. The butler tells Arne that if she's curious about anything, she can ask anything else. But Arne refused aggressively. Then the butler told her to take a rest, and he left. Finally, she got a break, but her bad luck was just not ending. Someone knocked on her door, it was Craven. She asks him, why are you here? Craven replies to be on your side, of course. Arne asks why you don't disguise yourself as a maid. This time, Craven asks her, do you feel sorry for that? He says you don't need to pretend, you know. However, your husband, if he's so handsome, then there's no shortage of good things. Why did he marry you? Arne shouted at him and said she also wanted to know. Suddenly another person knocked on the door. Arne asked, who is it? The person is Cassian. Both Craven and Arne are astonished after listening to this, they both panicked. Cassian asked, can I come in? Craven was frightened after listening to Cassian's voice. He asked, what should I do? How about I get to hiding? But Arne says there's no need since I'm going to live here until the end of this year. She says come in. Cassian came in and saw Craven. Arne explained that Uncle Sarno had something that needed to be delivered to me, but he had to go, so he told this person to pass it on. Cassian replied, so that's how it is. But he was annoyed. Craven was so frightened. Now Arne asks, what's the matter for you to come here? He said, I came here to tell you your schedule for tomorrow, and because I miss you, that's why. Arun blushed and thought, how can he say such embarrassing things out loud? Now a maid came to tell Arne that her bath had been prepared. Arun says I'll get going immediately. She said bye to Cassian and left. Craven also tries to leave, but Cassian stops him. He asks, "Can you spend a little time having a conversation with me?" Craven was worried about his identity. Craven says, "What do you intend to say that I have to spend time with?" He thinks if his identity were blown up, the commander would be in a tough spot. Cassian tells him, "I have something to ask." He instantly asks, "What is your true identity?" After listening to this, Craven was scared to death. Cassian says, "There are two things about which I am curious, your true identity and what kind of relationship you and Arne have." Craven replied, "It is a close relationship that is not easy to explain. And although I am not hiding it, I'm sorry I can't tell you in advance. I'll just say that letting Madam go so far away from home makes me very nervous. That's why I follow her." But Cassian says the truth, "I'm just wondering, are you a sword user?" Craven was astonished after listening to this. He asked Cassian, "How do you know?" Cassian told him about the handling of all the bad guys who ambushed that carriage. No matter how you think about it, the only person who can do that is a swordsman. Craven admitted that the commander is indeed a sword user, but before Craven could explain something, Cassian interrupted him and said, "You must be worried that your grandchild has to go to her husband's house, so you followed her here. In short, welcome to the Northern Empire." Craven is confounded. Cassian mistook him for Mr. Garhon Arun's other uncle, but Craven did not say anything to Cassian, said to rest comfortably, and then took his leave. After this, Craven told Arun about this. Arun told him it was a good opportunity to hurry and go home, but Craven refused. Now Arun decided she'd make him look like her uncle in terms of appearance. "My uncle has a sword more famous than himself, and that is the dragon-slaying sword Levitine. There was only one thing that could replace the majesty of that dragon-slaying sword. Come out, Evermore, as a pair with the Nevermore sword, Evermore born of light. It is sad to lead lost souls on the battlefield to the heroic paradise of the holy sword." The sword Evermore asks Arun, "Why did you call me out until now? Could it be that your feelings for me have cooled off? Clearly, when you make a contract with me, you say that you'll treasure me." Then Arun told Evermore, "There is this thing you have to do for me. That's a job no one else can do." But Evermore felt delighted and said, "You finally saw the outstanding ability I have, Master. Alright, say it saves. What kind of work is so special and mighty that only I can do?" Arun told Evermore to stay with Craven and pretend to be Levianti for me. After listening to this, Evermore was astonished. Evermore was astonished after listening to Arun. He shouts at Arun and says, "How could you do that to me? You cannot touch my precious body." But Craven interrupted and told Evermore, "I will wholeheartedly serve you, Sir Evermore. Every morning, moon, afternoon, and night I will polish you to the point of dazzling." After listening to this, Evermore agreed and said, "If you don't make me shine, I will send you back to the King of Hell." After this, we see Arun saying this to the maid. She is getting used to wearing skirts. While Arun is talking to the maid, Cassian comes to Arun and hugs her. Arun's face was reddened, and her heart started beating fast. She pushed Cassian back. Now Arun and Cassian are both watching the palace together. Arun says it is bigger and seems more powerful than the Western Empire. There's so much to see while Arun and Cassian are both having fun. But a servant comes to Cassian and asks, "Is there anything for you to do to come to the palace?" Cassian replied, "It sounds like I've been to a palace I'm not supposed to be in." The servant said no, that was not the case. Then Cassian told me to come to see His Majesty. The servant told them His Majesty is quite upset right now, so I guess you must wait a little longer. Now we see in the palace that the Majesty is yelling at Edward, the Crown Prince of the Northern Empire. He says to Edward, "Do you know how noisy it is around the second prince in line? Mackenzie, can you realize that you are a crown prince? Wake up, you pathetic bastard." After listening to this, Edward seems very angry. His servant tells him, "You can't do that here, it will come to His Majesty." But Edward doesn't stop here. When Cassian arrived at the palace, a servant told Edward about this. Edward said he would not be able to come to Grumium for a while because he was busy with work. Why did he come here now? The servant told him he got married recently. Don't say that you forgot that. Edward replies, "Of course, I remember the wedding ceremony that only Mackenzie can attend, right? That bastard does not know the difference between should and should not at that time. If I were not sick, I would have joined. What a shame. Where is he now?" Now we see Cassian and Arun sitting together at the palace, with Cassian thinking that the emperor was not comfortable. It must have been really annoying, as far as I know, after seeing off Uncle Sarno, who disguised himself to threaten with bribes despite ambushing Arun's car. But he didn't think that he would fail. It was thanks to the sword user that Arun survived, so the object that he used USESCHAP 1313 to vent is in need of one of the greatest abilities. That's interesting. Arun thinks, why was he smiling just now? And she asks, when can we be able to see His Majesty? We've been in the palace for 4 hours. Cassian told her that His Majesty seemed to be very upset. The garden is quite beautiful. What do you think if you go out there and enjoy the scenery a bit? Aruna agrees and goes to the garden. Arun was enjoying the scene, but suddenly, out of nowhere, a person interrupted her. On suddenly pushed him back out of nervousness. It was Edward. Edward was astonished after looking at an angel like this that suddenly appeared. Aruna asks if he is all right. Edward says yes, he is all right. He says, "May I ask where an angel like you comes from? You're very beautiful and in need. May I ask what your name is?" But Aruna refused to answer that question. She thought she should stay away from this person first. Edward makes his own thought in his mind. He thinks that because she wants to attract the attention of the crown prince, she pretends not to know. Edward says, "You are the one who knows who I am better than anyone else." "It's okay, my lady." I'm again asking, "What's your name?" In the meantime, guards came at Edward. He looked away for a second, and when he again turned to Arun, she was gone. He was so surprised after this.